Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Questlove Supreme. Your host, Questlove. I'm sorry, our recently awarded Webby award-winning Questlove.
3 times.
Multi.
Yeah. I've yet to see those trophies, but I trust that we've won those things. So, do you know who they're sending those to, Laia, at all?
I don't know. Somebody in the sky. I have no idea, but there are a lot of emails being sent. So
there's yeah, I was going to say, somewhere out there, they're living their dream as Questlove Supreme award winners, but that's neither here nor there. Because besides getting actual statues and accolades, I'll say that the joy of doing this podcast is, it's just every episode we just get educated, legend after legend after legend, and today is absolutely positively no exception to that rule. Simply put, today our guest is probably one of the greatest musicians, one of the greatest composers, one of the greatest band leaders, probably one of the greatest improvisers. I mean, when you really talk about the genre of free jazz and fusion, or whatever you want to call it, our guest is beyond pioneer. Like, I see him more as a painter, as an artist, who probably, I'll say that his greatest weapon is just his ability to create synesthesia in us with the colors that he paints, with his compositions, and with his actual playing. Probably one of the greatest time travelers of music. I mean,
ever. He's played with everybody.
every project of his storied career, from being a member of the legendary Art Blakey Jazz Messengers, playing with like Lee Morgan, Bobby Timmons, Amy Merritt. One of the prime architects of the greatest quintets in the history of jazz, with Miles Davis, Herbie Hancock, Ron Carter, and Tony Williams, with what we call the second great quintet, even down to forming Weather Report with Joe Zawinul, and playing with like Jaco Pastorius and Alphonso Johnson and Victor Bailey and all these greats, even to his own work. If I do this intro, the show will be over before we even get to questions. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome and give us the honor of welcoming one of the greatest architects in music, not jazz, but in creativity, the one and only Wayne Shorter. Thank you very much for doing
this. Applause.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for that introduction. Thanks. It really belongs to all of the cats. I call them the cats.
Oh,
I still call them the cats.
Yeah. I even called the guys from the classical area. They were cats and didn't know it.
Yeah. So right now, where are you speaking to us from? Where are you at right now currently?
Well, I'm right here in California, Los Angeles.
That's where you live right now?
I'm at home, yeah.
Oh, okay. How long has that been your home out there?
Well, I've been here since 1972,
wow.
71, 72, but 7 years in Florida, then moved back to California, yeah.
Now, normally, when I do this show, I try to go through the genealogy, but you have 7 decades of creativity under your belt, so we wouldn't even scratch the surface. So I kind of want to just do sort of random questioning. Now, you mentioned California, and there's a myth I would like you to settle with me. I come from the world of hip hop, and hip hop has been very territorial. The type of hip hop that comes from New York is different than that of down south. It's different than that of the West Coast. But is there any theory on why you believe, or I've always felt that California has never truly gotten its respect in terms of jazz music. Like, I've always heard that, no self-respecting musician would ever, stay in California. Like, you would stay in New York, where the heart of creativity is. But what was it about California that drew you to it? And did you ever adhere to jazz snobs that, or the jazz police, whatever, that always look down on California. And
Yeah, I know what you mean. Well, the first thing when I moved to California was a medical reason. I had a daughter who was acquired brain damage when she was born. And then the 4 seasons on the East Coast, the doctor said she would get colds from some of the drafts in some of the apartments, like with windows and stuff like that. And then she would be have seizures. Sometimes she would have 15 seizures in a day. And they said you have to go to a warm climate, like with 2 major climates, summer and spring, or go to California or something like that. So we moved from New York to California. And while we were moving, we found out other people were moving too, but they didn't have medical reasons. But like Herbie Hancock, he moved just before I did. Chick Corea, Joe Zawinul, and all.
It's an exodus.
Yeah, they were. And I was thinking they were moving to where jazz was needed, in a sense.
Yeah.
And I got that by observing Charlie Parker when he was out here, and he'd be relaxing in California and playing some of the places, and picking up the West Coast musicians to play with him. And I saw pictures of him rehearsing with Lenny Tristano, Lee Konitz, and the guys from out here, Chet Baker. And but Charlie Parker, he would play a bar mitzvah anywhere. See, with Charlie Parker, I'm saying where you were didn't matter. He was. I saw him in a movie where he was singing Mario Lanza's "Be My Love."
Right. Yeah.
Forrest Whitaker was actually acting it and
Oh,
singing.
yeah.
Right.
He was like, and while I'm mentioning this, I like to mention a musician who passed away. I didn't know he had passed away. His name was Bernard Wright.
Yes.
Pianist.
That's the rocker.
He's kind of wild and everything. I didn't realize he came out of the church when he was young, but he was one of the guys who played the synthesizer any way he wanted to, and piano. It didn't matter where he was. I'm sticking on this where you are location thing. And we have a little thing we say and talk about in Buddhism. When you pack your suitcase and you're going to move somewhere where you think you're better off, there's a little guy sitting on the suitcase named Karma talking about, what took you so long? I'm going with you. So you're going to take your environment with you. And, so never giving up is my motto. Never give up, and don't let where you are fool you. That's it.
Okay. You mentioned being a practicing Buddhist. One of the first people that I've ever heard mentioning that they were practicing Buddhist was Herbie Hancock. Is it safe to assume that both of you discovered this at the same time, or were you two a part of each other's process and studying Buddhism? Because even back, I remember interviews as early as like 1971 of him speaking of his Buddhist practice. When did you become a Buddhist?
Well, actually, in 1973, I took up the mantle, so to speak. I went to Japan without, and my wife at the time, Anna Maria, she's the one who passed away on TWA. Yeah. 800.
Oh, man.
She was nailing something on the wall one morning in California, in our first house. She's nailing something to the wall, and I said, "What you doing?" 3 o'clock in the morning. And she said, I just came from Herbie's house this afternoon, and he was telling me about this practice of Buddhism. And what we learned from Herbie was he learned it from Buster Williams. He learned about it from Buster Williams. Buster Williams said he learned about it from his wife, Veronica Williams. when they were about fresh out of high school. And so Herbie said, why don't you check it out for your daughter's sake? Because our daughter was born with these seizures and all that. So we thought maybe we would check out the philosophy and see how it connects with our daughter. And our daughter did pass away at age 15 of a grand mal seizure here in California. But the wise practitioners of Buddhism say she came with brain damage, but she completed her mission. And her mission was to bring her parents, to expose her parents to the ultimate law of life, the ultimate law of their life, that you are eternal and stuff like that. You know, a lot of the same sayings, but she came to wake us up, even though she only had a few words, she only learned a few words to speak and stuff like that. But her life was not in vain. So we're looking at a lot of other people who kind of think something is in vain. There's no use to do this. I'm going to give up on it. I got a bunch of shirts out here. It says "Never give up" on the shirt.
Gotcha.
So that's and it's not so much trying to be perfect and be a religious person. Like in fact, some of us who practice this Buddhism get wilder.
Well, hey, I mean, you know,
or anything, you get wilder.
weather report comes next. So of
I'm
course,
about to say, right?
because the thing is, especially with the history of our people in this country, with Black people, I always wondered, you know, how hard of a decision was that to make, you know, because I think that Black people were always trained to, you know, like we must only follow Christianity and any other philosophy. Like Maurice White would tell me that when he was sort of practicing his spirituality, that it was really controversial with everyday Blacks because it wasn't under the trope of like God, Jesus, and Christianity. But how, for you to do that so early, especially now that we're more open to, I guess, following our hearts and following traditions and ways and whatnot, you know, how was this easy for the people around you, your family members or your friends or whatever, like to accept where you were going, or did they just look at you like an alien, like, what?
I was 40 or 41, when I thought, you know, like I said, I got it together. I know, I can take care of myself. It's there's a point where some of us think we know everything, that we can handle everything that's coming our way. And when I was 40, I stopped to think about my daughter's seizures, how she came into the world with the brain damage and all that. And I started to think about this. I said, wait a minute, there's some stuff I don't know about. So I started listening to what some of the people I knew. Of course, it was Herbie, Buster Williams, my wife at the time, Anna Maria. She started working on this, listening to philosophy before I did. And when I went on a tour in 1973, July 3rd, to Japan, and when we all left, it was weather report, we all left and stopped in Hawaii. I stopped in Hawaii behind them, took another plane, and got in a small hotel by myself, because I was actually handling alcohol. So I wanted to be myself. We had a few days off before we did a concert in Hawaii, and just get ripped. Not just get ripped and sloppy and everything. I got me a new suit, Panama suit, and I walk around acting like I can handle everything. I went from nightclub to nightclub, sitting at the bar, talking philosophy, some jive philosophy with people and all that. And they told me, once you start to do this practice as a Buddhist, all this junk that you have in you was going to come out. It's like a water hose, a garden water hose that hasn't been used in a long time. And when you flush it with this philosophy, the first thing that comes out is a lot of leaves and rust and everything like that out of your life.
Mm.
And I was saying, whoa, I thought I was, so they even had what do you call it, missing person call on me in Hawaii. They couldn't find me until it was time to play the gig. And I got myself together and joined the band. And they said, you scared us to death, man. Where? So that I had gone to a temple in Japan and what do you call it, received something called, I don't want too many words, but Gojikai. Tina Turner has a book out on this stuff. She has a whole explanation of stuff and everything like that. And I received it in a temple. There's only a little baby and myself and the baby's mother in the temple. And we received something and we said, we're gonna practice this practice. So anyway, the thing about playing different, once you start doing stuff like this, playing different, what Herbie said was, he heard Buster Williams take a bass solo one night. Maybe you heard about this.
I haven't heard of this.
This is classic. He took a bass solo. They were playing at the Penthouse in Seattle, Penthouse nightclub. When Buster finished, the applause wouldn't stop. It was one of the longest applause that Herbie ever heard. And they got in the dressing room. He said, Buster, what you been doing? And Buster explained to him a little bit about what he was doing. So Herbie said, I want to try what's going on. And that was when he got, what do you call it? That hit,
Oh, Rocket.
Okay, I wanted to know how. Okay. That's how Buddhism changed his sound. Okay.
Well, actually, he didn't want people to think when you start practicing a philosophy, you're going to get hit records. No, but Herbie got a hit before with Watermelon Man.
Yeah.
And the other one,
Chameleon. Yeah.
But I always thought that Herbie had a lucky star over his head. Ever since I met him in 1963, he's one of those guys in school. There's another guy I went to school with, just like Herbie, bass player. He's a diplomat now. Eddie White, his name Eddie White, just like Herbie. They had this lucky star over their head all their lives. I said, man, nothing funny ever happened to them. Everything is good.
Just blessed, huh? Just
But then again, I learned quickly, you can't watch your neighbors count your blessings by watching your neighbors' house and going in there, watching their treasure trove, you call it.
Right.
So I said to myself, shut up and be cool. And I stopped talking. I went to meetings. We had meetings at our house, had a lot of meetings at our house. And a lot of name dropping of people who came to the meetings, people who wanted to be movie stars and all that, wanted to get this. But you'd be surprised the names are, I'm not going to say the names, but if every now and then I would say a name of a person who came to our house for a meeting. And then somebody would say, oh, you name dropping now, you name drop. But I cut them off quick and say, no, I'm not name dropping, I'm name lifting.
One question I have for you, Mr. Shorter, how did you get the nickname Mr. Gone?
Oh yeah, I was in Brazil, and we all went to Brazil to do a festival there, and the band came back to the United States early to do this record. I stayed another month in Brazil while they were making the record, and they were making some music, and they named it after me. They said, Joe's album said, let's call this one Mr. Gone.
I really like Joe's piece "Young and Fine" on that album. That's
that's that party time.
Yeah.
Party time stuff. Yeah.
I briefly met you once at a festival. I mean, this is like 20 years ago, or 20, maybe 25 years ago, and just briefly talking. And I believe you told me that you didn't even start your craft in playing clarinet and saxophone until you were like well into your teens. So, you know, and I really did, because we were in passing, I always wanted to ask you. So you're telling me that
16.
Yeah, like I would have never, I would have thought that you would have came out the womb, you know, with axe in hand. But
Yeah.
what was the love story between you and your ex? Because, you know, again, as I said at the top, because I mean, you know, besides, in my opinion, besides Bird, you know, I feel as though the level of sort of, even more than like what Coltrane was doing with his spiritual, his period, and Pharoah Sanders or whatever, like, to me, the way that you compose your music is just some other level. And I would just thought that you would have came to that place at least 10, 11, 12, like an early age. How did you discover your talents at such kind of a late stage in your life?
Well, actually, I used to play hooky from when I started high school. I played hooky, go to the movies, walk past the school and going down to downtown to movie theater. And I used to go see like 2 movies and a stage show. And the stage show was at the theater was called the Adams Theater. And there was Dizzy Gillespie, Illinois Jacket, and his brother Russell Jacket, and the thing called the Jazz at the Philharmonics. I'm watching this stuff, listening. I was about 15 then. And there's a music store right around the corner from the high school. I used to walk by this music store and look in the window. I was majoring in art, and I found myself cutting classes, just go look in the look at the instruments in the music store. Then I got me for $1 something, $1.50, a little thing looks like a submarine called a tonette, a plastic, like a plastic flute, had 6 holes. I got it, and I used to walk around the neighborhood blowing on this thing like doo-doo-doo-doo, doo-doo-doo-doo, like a and my mother said, whenever she wanted to get me to come in for dinner, all she had to do is open the window and hear where I was at. She said, I know where you're at. So then I started fingering this thing. No instructions. I just started doodle-doodle-doodle-doodle, playing with it. And when I went to see the stage shows, I hear them playing and I mashed the holes on this little, it looks like a submarine. I mashed like a, I tried to mash what I heard. And then I looked in the window real close one time, and there's this clarinet sitting up there among the other instruments, all vertical. And my grandmother and my mother got the money together to get this clarinet, which cost $90. It was a used clarinet. And the name on it said somebody's name, Elizabeth, New Jersey, on each part of the clarinet. They could take it apart. And I got that, I still have it.
You still have it?
Yeah.
Oh, whoa.
And I went into the music store. The guy who ran the music store was also, he ran the pit band at the Adams Theater when they had the shows. His name was Jack Arnold Press.
Right.
And he'd take me to the back room and started clarinet lessons, learning to read notes, counting, and all that, patting your foot and all, stuff like that. I did that 1 year with him. Then he got me a tenor saxophone too, because he said you make more money if you play clarinet and tenor than the music union again. So
Right.
I got to mess around with these things, but I would start playing at home about 6 hours a day. Not every day, but 6 hours of the school days. I stand up in the room, go in the room, and just I turn around and 6 hours going by. I'm still working on scales, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I listened to what was out there, listening to Charlie Parker, all the guys, Art Blakey, Thelonious Monk, what they were doing. And then I went to the library and took out records, classical, and I got one of Dizzy Gillespie's Manteca, and also I got Stravinsky's The Rite of Spring.
Rites of Spring, yeah.
Yeah, man.
You would shed the rights of, yo, that explains everything. The fact that you would shed the rites of spring explains everything. All right, to our listeners out there, real quick, Stravinsky's compositions used to cause riots. Like,
yeah.
Stravinsky was the EDM of his day. Stravinsky was the bomb squad public enemy of his day. Like he would make the audience angry with clashing notes, and you know, he was the free jazz of the classical era. And when he created Rites of Spring, I mean, just name all the controversial records that you can think of, from Miles is on the Corner to It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back, to even when, like, you know, Radiohead sort of turned their back on rock with, you know, with Kid A, like all these experiments, and it made the audience angry. But, you know, that was like one of the first examples of opening a portal of creativity where suddenly you didn't follow the rules of music. You had to just, you know, you followed your heart. And so,
yeah,
wow.
there's a story that in 1909, they were in Paris when they first did the Rite of Spring publicly. And it's a musician, I think it's a Montserrat or somebody, sitting next to a composer, sitting next to another composer. And when the Rite of Spring started, he was annoyed. He said, why did Stravinsky started with the bassoon way up high? It's an ugly sound. You know, something like that. And the other guy said, shh, be quiet. Let's see where he's going. And every time I play that, I say, Stravinsky started with something that would irritate people. I heard that somebody got killed in that
Yes.
audience.
Oh, wow.
So
it was like the first mosh pit, or the first first act of violence at a music. You know, I always bring that up when people talk about like violence in hip hop, and I'm like, you know, we learned classical music.
That thing started a long time ago. Listen, Lee
So
Morgan.
let me ask you, with, and I'm skipping all over the place, but since you kind of brought it up, I gotta ask you, working with Miles Davis's various experimental phases, that will, you know, eventually lead to him doing, you know, his fusion period, of which you weren't there for, but I gotta know, like, did you, at the time, did you feel like Miles was going through his own Stravinsky phase in terms of like where he was taking music? You know, at the time when Miles was really stretching out, and, you know, I kind of feel like that phase started with the last jazz record that you guys made, which was the Nefertiti album. Can you just explain one thing? What was the philosophy behind the title track, Nefertiti, in which you, Norm Miles, took a solo and you let Tony Williams and Ron Carter just run rampant with experiment? Like that was just unheard of at the time. Like, or were you guys just like roll the tape, you know, Tio, start the tape and just start going? Like, what was the philosophy behind that particular session in which you guys did a 7-minute jazz song with no solos in it and just let the rhythm section go crazy?
I had to get something.
I knew you was getting a prop. I love
it.
There you go.
Let's go.
You see this?
Yeah.
Nefertiti. You're holding up a statue of Nefertiti.
I made this when
No,
I
you
was
did.
15. I was 15 years old.
Wow.
And I got it from the school before they got a hold of it themselves, you know. I made this.
No.
This is a replica of the one that they have in the Berlin Museum.
Yeah.
And I got it from the newspaper and I copied it in clay and plaster. And this is it from 1950. From 1950 to now. There it is.
Hidden talents. That's beautiful.
Our listeners out there, Mr. Short we're on Zoom, of course. He's holding up a white sculpture of Nefertiti. And you did this at 15?
Oh,
yeah.
This is on YouTube and people are going to see that sculpture, so that's good.
Yeah.
I didn't know how heavy the thing is heavy.
That is beautiful.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
with Nefertiti, what caused you guys to do the repetition thing with no solos?
Oh yeah, well, Miles, when we started playing it, Miles was indicating with his body movement. He kept doing like again. So we go do the melody again. He kept going, and then Tony Williams started doing like a drum thing behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And it don't need any solos. It don't need the solo. Because when we played it in person, later when Chick Corea was a pianist,
right,
Chick would play a solo here and there on it. But it was, he said that there's nothing can match the melody. He said, what we heard, I went to Sweden and got one of those awards in Sweden.
Mm-hmm.
And they made an arrangement of Nefertiti, which is the baddest arrangement I've heard so far. It's with the orchestra there. They tore it up, and they didn't solo or they just did the melody and put clothes on it, put a costume on it that was like only the Swedish and the Europeans, and they're artistic. You know, they were saying, we understand.
Always.
They were saying, we understand where you want to go and where you could go. How about this? It was after Nefertiti that Miles did Bitches Brew.
Mm-hmm.
It's like he also wanted to start writing music where he would get the publishing, royalties from publishing, songwriting and stuff like that. And that one he got from Betty, I'm a down home girl. That was hers, her lyrics and everything. But he made just a melody out of stuff like that. I said, oh, go ahead. And he found that's when he crossed over into concert halls from the nightclubs into concert halls. And here's the funny thing. He said, one of the first things he did when he crossed over was Bill Graham's, the Ice House or someplace in California.
Right.
In the dressing room, we only played like a half hour. And he got good money for it. Mm-hmm. So what it was, we were used to playing 2 hours or an hour, but this is the first time we played 30 minutes. And then Miles was looking at the paycheck that he got from the organization. We were all sitting around, and we didn't look at it ourselves, but Miles was looking at the paycheck. He said, damn, 30 minutes. He looked at us and he said, I feel like a thief. So that's when he started, went to Europe and started getting those concerts in Europe and stuff like that. And that's when he met Cicely Tyson. Before Miles died, we all met in Switzerland.
Mhm.
And he held the thing with Quincy Jones, and all
yeah.
that stuff. Wallace Rooney was playing Miles's parts on the trumpet and all that. And then Miles got me and Herbie together and said, what would it be like if we got together again?
Mm.
And we said,
That's what y'all were talking about?
yeah, we said,
Wait a minute, you're trying to tell me, because the thing was, I asked Quincy, like, how did you get Miles to even agree to even go anywhere close to that type of jazz, which, he had somehow avoided, for at least in that traditional sense of playing jazz. And you're telling me that Miles Davis, you and Herbie actually spoke of doing something together again?
Yeah, but with Miles was thinking about what would we sound like after Weather Report and after Headhunter and after all that, what Herbie's been through and I've been, what kind of stuff could we conjure up?
That's what everybody want to know. Yeah.
So what he went and took the thing called doo-bop.
With Easy Mo B.
Yeah.
And
then he got the guys, Marcus Miller, and they got those guys together, guitar players and stuff like that. But his body kind of dictated where he was going to go musically.
Mhm.
And he would have to rest while playing.
Okay.
And to start a whole new something, it was going to be a lot of work. But we wasn't supposed to get together again, really.
Mhm.
But that thought was like lighting a match in a dark tunnel.
Right. I have a question about Miles. Has he offered any sort of opinion on your work with Weather Report during that period?
Yeah, he did say
that was the only thing happening out
he
there.
wrote in a newspaper. He said the only thing that was happening out there was Weather Report.
Oh,
Wow.
nice.
And he mentioned some pianos. He like happening as a pianist is Herbie, Chick, a couple other pianists that who were band leaders and everything. That's the only thing happening when he was gone for the 6 years.
Mhm.
6 years, and he'd come to see us at the theater in New York,
Mhm.
and people didn't know who he was. He'd come backstage, they didn't know who he was, and we said, "Hey, that's let Miles in, man. Come on."
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's crazy. Hey, of your first round of solo work, like the Schizophrenia album, The Night Dreamer, All Seeing Eye, like my favorite is Juju, but can you talk about what the creative process was in doing your solo work? Because I would imagine that if you were in Miles's band, like I would imagine that I know some band leaders that were frowned on what they would call moonlighting, like doing your own solo work. So I always wanted to know how Miles felt about like you and Herbie, especially like doing your own solo work on the side at Blue Note while still being in this quintet. Like what was the practice regimen like? Like how you guys were so tight as a unit. How often would you guys practice as a band during that period?
You mean as a Miles Davis band or our own band?
Well, I mean, just like, I guess I'm asking, how are you able to, maximize creativity with Miles Davis and also subsequently do your own solo stuff on the side?
I think Miles, he welcomed that it would shine on him it would, we do our own publicity, so to speak, which bounced off on the Miles Davis quintet. And it was like, we didn't have to call Miles to ask for a retainer while we were off, or when he was like in the hospital or something like that. We were like kind of self-sufficient in that way. And a lot of people wanted to play with the Miles Davis rhythm section. They wanted to make records with the Miles Davis rhythm section, but the guys were like Herbie, and then there's McCoy. You had, in other words, you had the top guys doing things together, and it made it a little difficult for anyone to crash that, or tear it down, or speak against it. Wow, they got Elvin Jones. They got even Art Blakey played on one of my records, my first records, played the drum. So there was that give and take, respect built in. But then later, when people start counting the beans, the royalties, what sold and what didn't sell, and all that, there was an effort, I think, on the record company's part to break up any kind of alliance that we formed that they couldn't get their hands on.
Can't penetrate.
They kind of just were discouraging the buildup of like you'd be in Duke Ellington's band for life. But people starting a band from Duke Ellington's band, or starting their own band from Count Basie, Erskine Hawkins, and all that, they were together almost like a life sentence. There was no
life sentence.
They're the only ones people who graduated, in a sense, would be like if you went into the movies, like tap dancers, or the vocalists. Have you seen Ella Fitzgerald's documentary?
No.
Yes, I have. Yes, it's amazing.
Where she became the band leader. Yeah.
Another one to add to was, dang, I was just gonna add.
One question. Go ahead, Laya.
We were talking about documentaries, and I was just gonna ask you, because I've seen you in a lot recently, and especially Lee Morgan and Miles, and I was wondering, as an architect, how do you feel in this moment of documenting all this history, and do you feel like they're getting it right?
They're doing part and parcel, put it that way.
Okay.
And what would you like? What did they miss? Yeah.
There's another one coming out on myself.
A second? Your second documentary about you, right? It's a second?
No, this is a full one.
Okay.
Coming out soon.
Ooh.
And this is I can say what it is. The title thus far, the title is Wayne Shorter, Zero Gravity.
I'd be remiss if I didn't speak of your work with the Jazz Messengers. I just want to know, in general, is the Jazz Messengers like your first actual, like, professional big gig, just in terms of you being with the unit?
Yeah, Messengers.
How did
1959.
There it goes. How did you join up with Art Blakey and those guys, and just what was that period like in '59, like traveling the world? And I know you were from Newark. I know that, America was in such a chaotic sort of place, especially for Black people. What was it like as a person that was able to leave America and start touring the world and going overseas and all those things to see what effect did that have on you?
Well, actually, I was working with Maynard Ferguson's band.
Okay.
You know, Maynard Ferguson's big band
Yes.
for about 3 weeks. And one time we were working at Birdland, and the waiter said, "There's a telephone call for Wayne." Said, "Art Blakey's on the phone." Said Lee Morgan had come to Newark, New Jersey, and played a session with John Coltrane. And about midnight, Lee called my house. He heard about me. He called my house for if I could go and play with them. And the last number, they were playing a night in Tunisia at a nightclub in Newark. And I went, got my stuff together and played on the last number with Lee Morgan and John Coltrane. And then,
Night in Tunisia?
yeah.
Oh.
There was a jam session, and Lee had been going around to the jam sessions, listening to people. And we worked in Newark with Dizzy Gillespie's big band, with the drummer Charlie Persip from Newark, and all that. I was at the place called Sugar Hill. By the way, that's the place I saw Billie Holiday before I went in the Army. She was at Sugar Hill in Newark.
You making my eyes water, Wayne. It's too much.
All right.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Yeah. So on this month, they was all in there. And anyway, when I got out of the Army, that's when Lee called me and said, "I'm playing with John Coltrane in Newark at midnight. We're going to play one more number. Can you come? I heard about you." So I went and played. Then when I got with Maynard Ferguson's band, we were playing in Canada at a racetrack, Canadian Exposition, you call it. And during the break, with Ahmed Jamal and Sarah Vaughan, they were doing a break. Here comes Lee Morgan running across the racetrack. He came up to me. I'm sitting in the audience. He said, "You want to be with the Messengers? You want to be with the Messengers?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Come with me." And I went to a tent. There's Art Blakey sitting there. And the Art said, he said, "Lee Morgan is the apple of my eye." And I trust what he said. Art never heard me really. He said, "Do you want to be in my band?" I said, "Yeah." So he called Birdland, well, I was still playing with Maynard Ferguson's band. He called Birdland and told Maynard Ferguson that Wayne is a fighter pilot. He's not in the, he doesn't work with bombers like big band. He's a fighter pilot. So Maynard said, if he can find somebody to take his place, it's okay. And I found somebody, real good cat too. And then I flew from there to French Lick, Indiana, big festival with the Messengers, Miles Davis, all of them, Cannonball, they were all there. And that was the start of my gig with the Jazz Messengers. And here's one of the big pieces of advice that we got from Art Blakey. When we went to Europe, Art said, "Don't try to razzle dazzle and people in how much you know about jazz and bebop and then how much you know. Don't try to
Show off.
Yeah, show off and everything that, because the only thing they're going to remember is your behavior." He said, "Okay, your behavior." But I was cool. Me and Lee, we were cool and everything. So the behavior was like a guide for us wherever we went to just be cool, play what you play. We were the coolest dressers too, everything, you know. And so I was with them for 5 years. 5 years with the Jazz Messengers. And just be cool. Don't pat your foot. Don't pat your foot, William.
That Lee Morgan documentary is everything.
Nah, that was great. One question I have for you, Mr. Shorter, was about one of my favorite saxophonists, Cannonball Adderly.
Yeah.
Talk about just your work with him and like you guys' relationship. What was he like?
So Cannonball he was cool. He was very kind of not jovial, but he liked to have a good time,
Mm-hmm.
and he liked to have the bounce in his music. You know, and he had a nice combination with Miles and all them. And it was the combination of J.J. Johnson, Sonny Stitt, and Miles too. Then it was real short, and I did these people like Cannonball, I played on J.J. Johnson's last record.
Yeah.
Cannonball, I saw him last at the Blue Note in the lower part of New York, near the Holland Tunnel.
Mm-hmm.
And him and his brother Nat, we had conversations and talking about life and stuff. But that thing about being a school teacher, that was very evident in his mannerism when he talked about music and stuff like that. He was still attached to being a teacher in Florida. I know he taught in schools in Florida, something like that. But then there's the other ones. There's some alto saxophone players that my brother was crazy about. One named Ernie Henry,
Mm-hmm.
and there was Danny Quebec who did the opening of Round Midnight. You know, that I Quebec's nephew. There's names of people that had sound. There's what's the name? Together with Wardell Gray,
Whatever.
and this was it, Wardell Gray and my man who did the Round Midnight. You know, we used to stand around the jukebox. Wardell Gray had that sound that linked the sound that a lot of the guys wanted. Stan Getz got that sound from Wardell Gray and the president, Lester Young.
Young, yeah.
I had a discussion with Lester Young in a nightclub up in Canada on his night off or during a break. I was looking for something to drink in the club when I'm doing the break.
Mm-hmm.
He took me down in the cellar, the wine cellar. He said, let's go downstairs and get some real cognac. And we just talked. I didn't tell him I was in the Army. I didn't tell him I was a musician, but we talked a little bit the first and last time I saw Lester Young in person.
Oh, man.
It's the club on Yonge Street in Toronto, Canada. Yeah, so that club was something. So, but other than that, these conversations with like Billy Eckstein would say something backstage. He's telling us Art is introducing us to these guys. Then Louis Armstrong, and then Lionel Hampton, and we're shaking hands with man, and Lionel said, right, he called everybody Gates. Hey, Gates, write something for my band, Gates. Write something for my Gates. And there's Woody Herman. And so all of these people, man, I'm telling you, there's Duke Ellington. We're shaking hands with these people and moving them through. And there was what's his name? Pianist.
I love it. Stumping the QLS. Yes, stumping QLS. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Wayne.
Timmons, I don't know.
This is a first.
Not Joe.
Tad Dameron.
Okay.
And these names, man. And there's the ladies too.
Oh, just shut up. Well, there's some ladies.
You know, the sweethearts of rhythm.
Yes.
Yeah, the
Yes.
sweethearts.
Please
And
say
there
their
was-
names. Yes, yes.
Yeah. And something about the clouds of, maybe that's originally, it was just clouds of joy or something like that. The sweethearts of rhythm. And there was Slide Hampton, the Slide Hampton's sister, Gladys Hampton, played
Mhm.
drum. She was
Okay.
playing the drum. She played like Philly Joe Jones. And there's Gloria Bell, who was married to George Coleman. Gloria Bell played the bass. She had the jam. She had
Give
the
these
jam
people some
session.
homework, Wayne. You are giving all these listeners some homework. I love it.
Man,
Yes.
listen,
Reference
for
these,
real.
say their names. Yes.
Yeah, she had a place up in Harlem called Connie's, where we did jam sessions at Connie's. And right across the street was where Small's Paradise,
Yes.
across the street. We go back there and play, do the jam session. There's Nancy Wilson sitting in the audience. She was the secretary to Diane Carroll's husband at the time. And all
Wow.
time of stuff was going on. And the guy that Denzel Washington played as the gangster, the guy who ran.
Frank Lucas.
Yes.
No,
Yeah.
he was under the bar. He'd be sitting under the bar, checking out who's coming and going. Because they had the double parked Eldorados outside. And some people came inside, some of these high rollers, they would come inside and want to hear Miles play one note. And Miles would go, bang. And the guy put down a big $100 bill and said, that did it. I came to hear Miles and I heard him. And they leave.
This documentary is going to be good. You need a scripted movie too. We need everything.
Well,
All
you know,
yes.
this is kind of a two-parter. But when we come back for part two, I definitely want to get into your opera with the great Esperanza Spalding and Iphigenia project. And so I thank you for this education. We're gonna commence with a part two of Questlove Supreme with the great Wayne Shorter. And we hope you guys come and join us, okay?